how closely knit were these revolutionaries across the country? You had Aurobindo Ghosh and Barin Ghosh's Anushilan Samitis. You also had Savarkar's Mitra Mandals or Abhinav Bharat, all working in some sort of a concert with each other. How did that happen in times when communication may not have been that easy, and the fact that the British were watching every move?
So this is that is where this book, I hope, will be interesting, because they were using the railways, they were using many of the communication networks that the British had built, and of course they weren't just doing this in India; they were doing this across the world. So, for example, Savarkar had set up a unit in India House in London. He had another group functioning out of Paris. There were the Ghadarites all along the west coast of North America. And inside India, as you said, there was Sri Aurobindo setting up this network in Bengal. But do remember that when he started, he wasn't living in Bengal, he was living in Baroda. So there were all these amazing networks that were being built. And of course, the thing that they used to spread this inside India was a network of akhadas. These network of akhadas, by the way, have existed in India from medieval times, and they have a long history of resistance to foreign rule, again, forgotten very much. So this was used, and internationally, students were used, but also, by the way, the network of gurudwaras was used. So this was also a very important thing. So this network of gurudwaras, the network of temples, the network of akhadas, these were what were being used to spread this nationalist message.
Also, many revolutionaries going far and wide to Kabul, to Persia, people like Pandurang Kankoje and people who collaborated with anti-British forces in these countries, in these parts of the world. How did they keep in touch with the revolutionaries back home?
So obviously it was not easy, and very often they would lose touch with each other. But let me give you an example of Pandurang Kankoje. He came from Nagpur, he escaped to Japan, then went to North America and was part of the Ghadarite movement. In the First World War, he then gets backed by the Turks and the Germans to try and invade India from the west using an army through Persia. And so he ends up and he ties up with another revolutionary base there called Sufi Amba Prasad. And they raise an army, partly Indian, partly local Persian tribesmen and so on. And they're trying to enter India through the west, through Balochistan. Interestingly, the person who was kind of sent to fight them off is Brigadier Dyer, who we remember from Jallianwala Bagh, but his original sort of reputation was built fighting Pandurang Kankoji on the border of what is now Iran and Balochistan.
So General Dyer makes his name there and then comes to Punjab, and Jallianwala Bagh happens. And at that time, there's also mention in your book about the fact that Akal Takht actually presented him a siropa in Punjab after Jallianwala Bagh. How did that happen?
So you have to understand the internal politics of various groups. On one hand, you have these sort of revolutionary nationalists operating through akhadas, but also through the gurudwaras. And you have on the other side the British intelligence, which knows that this is going on. And they're very afraid that these Sikh soldiers in the army, the Maratha soldiers in the army, and others are going to go into revolt in the middle of the First World War, not going to be a happy situation. So what they do is they begin to infiltrate many of these institutions, particularly, for example, the gurudwaras. So, for example, in North America, there is a secret agent called Hopkinson who then infiltrates many of these gurudwaras, and the British spend a lot of money trying to buy off these gurudwaras and deliberately create a schism between the Sikhs and the Hindu community, which were very close and intertwined up to that point. Now, that is the context in which you have to go back to Jallianwala Bagh. What is going on in 1919? These Indian soldiers who fought in the First World War had nearly revolted under the Ghadar uprising in 1915. that uprising didn't quite happen, but they had nearly revolted. They had gone off to war. They had come back now. They are still radicalized. And they are now experienced soldiers who have lost the fear of killing the white man.